Hey guys, it's Violet Shadow and I am not dead, so it's great to be back. Today we are reading the next chapter from The King's Queen. Please, excuse me, if you don't remember what happened, please go back and watch the last chapter. It is part of a chunk video, but it's worth it to be able to get caught up. Let's get on with it. The King's Queen by Zira Zaking Zin, Chapter 22. Aaron's point of view. Today's the day. Pulling my cloak over my head, I waited for Jean's signal. The castle was busy as ever, even after nightfall. Guards roaming around, servants chattering tirelessly, and my father. Glancing up at his window, I studied his shadow cast by the lights in his room. If he caught me, I'd be dead. Backing away from the corner, I felt my heart race at the thought that our plan would fail. Shaking away my worries, I fished the canvas out of my pocket. I unfolded and stared at the sketch of Levi's face. He's so beautiful. I've met princesses and princes in vast lands, but none of them ever grabbed my attention. But Levi, with his sharp tongue and strong personality, I was hooked. I never really planned on sending someone to draw his face for me. It was all his fault. He mentioned in one of his letters that he felt insecure with other omegas because he had short hair and was styled in an undercut. I got curious. All the omegas I met, male and female, they always had long hair. I just couldn't resist. I required the best painter, Sheena. I felt lucky when he said artist was once a ninja in the far land off east. My father coughed, pulling me away from admiring the portrait. Inching a little from my hiding spot, I stared at my father's window. The coughing continued. I could almost hear the doctor's booming orders to the servants. My father had been ill for so long, and his condition worsened as the days passed. I had an urge to run to his room and help him in some way, but then again, I had nothing to offer. I barely knew any healing magic. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't. My father thinks it was no longer useful because we have skillful healers, thus demanding me to focus on offensive magic, wielding swords out of thin air, casting fireballs, bending nature with my will, and everything violent. I tried to reason with him that learning healing magic would help me notice curses that could possibly cast upon me or on anyone, but he didn't even bat an eye. My father planned my whole life, from the time I woke up to the time I went to sleep at night. I barely had fun during my childhood. Those were only the days when my mother was alive. After that, it was all lessons, classes, parties, and other shitty royal things. I may be the prince, but I'm human too. Well, humanish. If Titans were categorized as human, nonetheless. I need this break. The coughing didn't pause from my father's window. I couldn't help but frown. He may be cruel at times, but he is still my father. I didn't dare go against his orders since what my mother told me before she passed away. But this time, only this time, I chose myself. There were risks with our plans, but I'm willing to take it. I want to meet Levi. Meow. I perk up, hearing the quiet sound of John's signal. Rolling my eyes to the prophetic signal, I crouched down low enough and walked towards the stables. John, you didn't say anything about sneaking the prince to our homeland. Walking like a cat, I remained silent as I watched the two in the stables. Mako, please, keep it down. You're my only hope. John pleaded with his hands together. You said you need my company because you hate going out in the dark, and you expect me to say yes with your plan? Mako whispered, shouted at him. I knew that the healer in training had set aside his setting because he knew Jean was a coward in the dark. Everyone knew that. Jean was afraid of the dark after all, and only Mako tolerated him. I know, but you're my only hope, Jean repeated. If I asked Almond, he'd turn me down immediately and probably tell the king. Of course Almond would say no, Mako sighed. He's going to be the next advisor after all. Jean, I'm here. I finally let my presence be known. Both of them turned towards me immediately. Mako tensed. My lord, he whispered and bowed his head. I'm Mako. I greeted, gesturing for him to lift his head. You know me, my lord. Of course, not because I have to memorize everyone in the castle, but because John won't stop talking about you. I smirked at my butler. Aaron, we had a deal. Jean hissed. When he addressed me by my name, that meant he was dead serious, but I simply didn't care. Watching him blush in front of his crush was hilarious. Really? Mako turned to him with a small smile. I guess I'll help then. You will? John perked up. Yes, but you owe me this one, John. Marco glared at him before walking towards the carriage. Promptly, Jean followed him and readied the horses. I patiently waited for them while keeping an eye out. When all was ready, Jean assisted me to get inside the carriage. Sitting down on the soft cushion, I stared at Jean when he entered and sat in front of me. I asked Marco to drive us to town, he explained. What about the gates? I asked. I sneaked in some sleeping potion in the guards' jinx during dinner. They're completely asleep now. Are the gates open? The carriage started moving, and I could feel my heart pounding my chest. You'll see, but I want you to understand, Your Highness, that I did all of this to supply your request. I blinked at him, confused for a moment. Then I felt it, magic. Taking a peek out the window, we're in the east gates. The gates open to the forest, away from the village. We only opened this gate as father was in the mood for hunting, and it was exclusively just for that activity. As we drew closer, I noticed all the guards were sound asleep, and once the carriage was a meter away from the gates, the doors glowed lightly before opening silently. I gaped, impressed at the spell that was cast on the gates, and then I noticed the horses had no footprints. Once we were outside the castle, I sat back down and threw my questions at Jean. How did you do all this? When did you learn magic? He sighed, running a hand through his hair. My mother was a witch. She taught me magic. She figured that I might need it someday. That's amazing. Why didn't you tell me? You could have been helping me with your magic. My father told me to lay low. The king doesn't yet know, and only Marco knows. And I think that is better that way. I deflated. I knew why my father was so strict when it came to magic. Mother loved it, but her power fought against her, and I pushed away the past, looking up at the present and at the upcoming future. This is really happening. I'm meeting Levi. And Jean straightened in his seat. What exactly do you see in Levi? He asked me. It was a strange thing. I don't know. I shrugged, looking out the window, admiring the moonlight as light cast down from the meadows. What would you say if I asked why you like Marco? Jean immediately turned red with his lips sealed. I could tell the gears in his head were working overdrive, but after a good minute he avoided his gaze from me. The horses picked up the pace, and we were traveling to the south of Sheena. I like him. There's something that I can't point out, but I know deep inside that. I paused, not sure how to explain the feeling I felt every time I read his letters. I liked him. As simply as that, I could feel my heart grew fuzzy. I just hoped Levi would feel the same. End of chapter 22. Well, I hope for it not to be another few months before another chapter gets out, but we'll see. See you later. Bye.